There are a lot of things I love about each Souls game. I mean, they are literally some of my favorite games of all time. However, there are some things that I don't like from each of the games. So in this video, I'll be naming 2 things that I hate from each Souls game. And by the way, last week I made a similar video to this about the things that I actually like from each Souls game. And before I get into the video, remember this. This is just my opinion, and not because I don't like 2 things from each of the games, that doesn't mean I don't like the games in general. I love them. Anyways, let's get started. Dark Souls 1. The 2 things I hate the most about Dark Souls 1 are actually not that bad, but it's things that can be a bit annoying at times, and that is the lack of omnidirectional rolling when locked onto an enemy and the lack of fast travel until mid-game. The lack of omnidirectional rolling in this game caught me off guard a few times, maybe because I was used to the other Souls games rolling in movement before playing Dark Souls 1. It can be a bit annoying when fighting enemies, but to be fair, most of the enemies seem to be designed without you having to do omnidirectional rolling, my bad, when locked on. And I also know that locking off can make fights somewhat easier at times, so yeah. No, for the fast travel. To be honest, this isn't such a bad thing because it forces you to explore the world at least in the first half of the game. Now, it does get a bit annoying when you want to pick up an item from somewhere else and now you have to make a long ass journey to find that one item. So yeah, next up we have Dark Souls 2. And for Dark Souls 2 would be the enemy placements and the slow healing. Trust me, a lot more things could be here, but these 2 things annoyed me the most in Dark Souls 2. First of all, in Scholar of the First Sin Edition, there are way more enemies in areas. Like, I feel like the devs just wanted the game to be hard for the sake of being hard instead of challenging and fun. No, I'm not going to spend too much time on that because I'm probably going to make another video about Dark Souls 2 in general. And no, it's not going to be a hate video. But the other thing that annoyed me the most in this game is the slow healing. Like 60% of the time when I die in a boss fight in this game is mostly because of the slow healing. When you're healing in this game, it feels like your character is in slow motion or some shit. And it also seems like the bosses attack you every time you try to heal. But yeah, that's about it. Dark Souls 3. No, Dark Souls 3. There's not a lot of things I hate about Dark Souls 3, so it was kind of hard coming up with these. And to be honest, the 2 things I don't like about this game isn't even that bad. The first thing I don't really like is how dull the early game looks, and I'm talking about before you go to a New Orlando. No, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying these areas look bad, I'm just saying they were just a bit colorless. But I do know why the game did this. I think it's supposed to show how fucked up the world is and also how there's a lack of life in it. I don't know if I'm just saying shit. But yeah, and the next thing I don't like is how short the DLCs are. Like the Ashes of Ariandel DLC is so fucking short and only has 1 good boss. And while the Ring City DLC has better bosses, it still felt a bit too short, especially since it's supposed to wrap up the trilogy. But it's still an amazing DLC and a great way to end the trilogy, even though it was a bit short in my opinion. Just wish it was, you know, a few more bosses before Gale. Bloodborne. In Bloodborne, the thing I don't like is that there should have been more weapons in the game. Like, I do like the trick weapons, but some of them just doesn't interest me that much. So when I start a new playthrough, I'll just usually use the same ones I used previously. So yeah. And also, the other thing I don't like is how most of the good blood gems are only in certain chalice dungeons. And while I don't hate the chalice dungeons, I think they're just a bit confusing, plus I don't like underground labyrinths. Look, I don't know how to pronounce that shit. Anyways, let's move on. Sekiro. In Sekiro, the 2 things I hate the most is 1, I wish there were more weapons. And yes, I do know the reason why you can't have more is because you can only deflect with the katana. But imagine if the devs found a way to make you use, I don't know, dual wielded weapons, or I don't know, a huge ass Uchigatana. The other thing I don't like is something similar to the first one, and that is the fact that you only have a small amount of outfits to choose. And again, I do know they added 2 other outfits, but I wish there were more. Like, some of the mods actually have some cool ass outfits. I know they're from like other media and shit like that, but they would fit in the game so well. So I just wish the devs added those. Finally, Elden Ring. The 2 things I don't like the most about Elden Ring is how overtuned the bosses are in the late game. Like, I feel like they're just so fast and they barely give you any time to attack. And also, the other thing I don't like is how weak Torrent is. Like, a twig can brush past Torrent and he will just stop mid-run, allowing the bosses and enemies to hit you. And not only that, like, yeah, Torrent is, I don't know, Torrent is just, he's a good horse or whatever the fuck he is. I don't know. I just think he needs a slight, I don't know. Fuck it, I'm just gonna move on. And yeah, those were the things I hated the most with each of the Souls games. Remember, I still love these games, so it's not hating if you love them, but it's also good to, you know, point out some things you don't like. And by the way, it's not like I'm just hating without showing love, because I literally made a video last week about the things that I love from each of them. So yeah.